Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode number 7 of the Whitey and Wills Show, the only podcast dedicated to the Effingham area prep sports scene. The only podcast that we know of. We still haven't been made aware of any others. My name's Dustin White. Mike Wilson joining me as always. Mike, we no guest this week, so we're going to try and keep it a little shorter than usual. That's going to be on you, but we'll see if we can get a nice brisk episode in and just talk a little bit about a few local sports things.
Yeah, we had some travel issues. A person didn't think they were going to be heading out till late in the day today, and I guess that got moved up. And so we've got some interesting people lined up as future guests, though. So should we throw teasers out there at all, or just?
Maybe like hint at it without saying names. That way there's plausible deniability if we get completely shut down later.
Well, our goal is next week to have a Division I college basketball coach on. How's that? Is that a good hint?
I think that's good. That's solid.
That's good. That's solid. And like I said, other things we have working. So as we transition now, as some of our fall sports are winding down, and transition into getting ready for basketball season. I think maybe we'll start shifting a little bit of our attention to basketball ramp up moving forward. We may try to do some, grab some quick interviews with some of our local coaches and kind of chop those into a show. That'll be on you, Mr. Techno Wizard, to cut and paste.
I can make that happen. I think so.
All right. That's over my pay grade.
Well, see,
what is my pay grade? You've never, Whitey's name is first.
We've got to build a little bit bigger following before there's any pay grades at all.
Okay.
I think that's still probably not something we have to worry about. So yours is the same as mine. First, name first or not. Order of the names at this point doesn't make any difference. So,
all right, that's fair.
So, we'll get started with Effingham High School football this week. I think that season officially came to an end Saturday night because we weren't sure how the playoffs were going to shake out. Effingham lost its game Friday night to Highland 42-21. And so that finished the Hearts at 4-5, which most seasons you would know that's it, no playoffs. But there was some doubt in the air Friday night because there was some talk that the playoff field might have to include a few 4-win teams just to round it out. And Effingham, by virtue of the number of playoff points that they had racked up throughout the season, would have definitely been in that conversation if some 4-win teams had made the field. As it turns out, they were able to fill out all 8 classes without putting any 4 victory teams in. So 5-4.
Did any 5-win teams not make the playoffs?
Not that I've heard of.
Okay. It was almost like they hit it right on the number.
Well, I think so, because when I was looking at Saturday morning or I guess Friday night, when I was looking at some of the projections, Steve Susi is the guy at the Peoria Journal-Star who I was following along with. He does a lot of work with that. There were a lot of 4-4 teams going into that final week of play. And so my assumption is that enough of them got victories. I mean, that has to be how it went. So yeah, I would say that pretty much every 5-4 team, if not every 5-4 team in the field, ended up making the playoffs. So if Effingham had been able to get that win against Highland, they would have made the field, especially because again, playoff points, if they'd been on that 5-win bubble, they would have been up toward the top of it just because of the success of the teams they faced. But didn't get it done against Highland. 42-21. I don't know how well that encapsulates the way the game went. It was competitive early.
It wasn't. I don't know that it was indicative of the game. But then, I sat back and then, it kind of was, but it wasn't. Interesting ball game. I was there probably till the middle of the third quarter, then had to leave to get some people some places, but interesting ball game.
Yeah, Effingham, they offensively played pretty well in the first half, moved the football, ran the football well, especially, but completed passes when they needed to. I think that Tanner Pontius, quarterback, was 5 for 5 in the first half. I'm doing that off the top of my head, but I think that's where he was. So they didn't throw it a ton, but were successful and scored a couple touchdowns throwing the ball in the first half. But then in the second half, you started to have some turnovers, some interceptions, a fumble lost, and in a game where Highland was the only time they didn't score, the only possession that the Bulldogs didn't score was when they had a fumble of their own. You couldn't afford any turnovers. You couldn't afford one turnover, let alone three. And so that was kind of how the game turned.
And it wasn't a case where, I don't want to say Effingham's defense didn't play well, because they played fine. It was just, they just is kind of a bend but don't not break. But then at times it cracked.
Well,
had a couple of nice goal line stands.
Yeah.
And then
the 50-yard touchdown.
Yeah. Well, that was huge. That hurt really right there at the end. But I'll tell you, a play that affected the whole night may have made things look different in the beginning, could have had a huge effect on everything. Highland's first drive, they got that penalty for a lineman downfield.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then their coach called timeout and came out and pled his case to the officials. Hey, it was a screen pass. The ball was behind the line of scrimmage. So I guess linemen are allowed to do that. You don't have the luxury of replay to see where everyone was, but obviously he convinced the officials of that. And that was a huge, huge, huge turn in that game.
Yeah.
Because, 10-yard penalty. Now Highland, maybe that first possession, they end up having to punt instead of marching down the field and scoring like they did. Effingham answered. Highland's second touchdown, I know, was iffy. We were actually down near that end zone, and I couldn't tell. The young man ended up, I think he and the ball both ended up, at least his upper body, probably from his, his shoulders and his head ended up eventually in the end zone. But again, you don't know where was the ball when the knee hit the ground.
Yeah.
We're spoiled by replay on college and NFL football. But I think the thing that irked the Effingham coaching staff off about the whole call was it was such a long delay.
Yeah, that's and I said that on the air too. I don't know. I don't have the slightest clue on officiating mechanics, but I have seen enough games to know that in a high school game, when the line judge comes running in and hasn't made a call yet, like the longer it takes for him to say anything, the less likely it is that it's going to be a touchdown, because what are they looking for? You know what I'm saying? I don't know what they could be looking for. In that case, I think it's just both guys coming toward the middle, hoping that the other one would make a call, and nobody did. Maybe trying, I don't know, again, officiating mechanics are not my bag by any
right. And if you're waiting that long to see where the ball is, obviously now the ball has been, the young man on the ground is obviously now has the ball into the end zone. But yeah, I think if that call is made immediate, yeah, the Effingham sidelines, the coach is probably, a little upset, but I think it was the whole idea of the delay.
Yeah.
And how long it took to make that call. Now you've got the ball 1st and 10 at the 1 foot line. You've got to try to, get the ball out of there. And very tricky situation in high school football, how you're going to do that. But yeah, that kind of, but then Effingham, took the kickoff, marched right back down and scored. It was kind of funny. It was the tip drill in the same corner of the end zone where Murfreesboro scored 2 years ago.
Yeah, it really was.
And I wasn't sure if there were any Highland defenders anywhere close to that play. I don't think there was.
That was the thing. Evan Weymouth, who got the initial hand on that pass, and I think it was, I don't know if it was intended for him or not. It's really hard to say.
Sure it was.
They were both open. You're right. And he was the only person to get a hand on it. And Caden Walls ended up with the football, and he had 2 touchdowns. And that was nice to see him score a couple of touchdowns in that game. But it was.
The Hearts also had the Hearts had another receiver right there as well. There was a third receiver right there. And I just I remember, but then I kind of thought, wait a minute, was there any Highland kids even
in
the crowd picture?
It was certainly the right play.
I think he caught him off guard.
And executed just well enough to get the score, right?
Just exciting enough.
Yeah, it was good. Effingham, we talked about it on the air, Greg and I did. They only had 9 seniors. And not all of them were big contributors as far as on the field. I always want to say on the field during games, because contributions don't just happen during contests. As a person who was not a star on the field in any sport, I always want to make sure that I clarify that the kids who show up to practice and help make that practice possible are important too. But with that caveat made, you have a lot of kids coming back next year, and I hope this was a good building block for them to be in it for 9 weeks, to be in the conversation, and get that meaningful playing time in a full 9-game season, by the way, which is unfortunately not what the previous class's seniors got. But get that 9-game season in, get some work in, and hopefully be ready to be back in the playoff hunt next year.
Well, and the thing is, in basketball, you always say, hey, I got a lot of points coming back. You just got a lot of minutes coming back. A lot of kids who are on the field, if you're 22, there's not a lot of, you got a lot of kids coming back and a lot of kids in key positions. Now, you can't always assume growth from one year to the other. And when I say growth, I don't mean these kids are going to get 2 inches taller, but, bigger, faster, stronger. Coach Hefner has shown that his teams have made that step physically.
Yeah.
A big change. And it'll be interesting. The year leading up to this season probably wasn't ideal for off-season work. So this will be interesting. And,
yeah, I think
it sounds like they may be playing on a new surface next year.
Yeah, we could talk about that too. I had not even thought about that, but that's something we can talk about too.
I had heard a rumor about that about a month ago. And I think I was surprised at the price tag. I thought it would be more than that. But again, you're not building everything from scratch per se. So I kind of was led to believe that the donations are in place. It's there now, it's just a matter of, and hopefully, I think they've said if they can start moving dirt by December, they can be ready to go at the start of the season. And I would assume, I know we've had the band, big band invitational, and now that the season is over, I would assume you can start, maybe moving and working on that field sooner.
Yeah.
Probably sometime in November, if that's how everything's going to line up. And
happen. So let's make sure make sure everyone's on the same page about what we're talking about. Right before the game Friday night, and it was Greg that kind of filled me in on this, but we started getting word that Effingham High School's school board was, going to have some pretty serious conversations about putting field turf on their field instead of having a grass field. And we've seen this. It's not unprecedented by any means. Local high schools are doing this. Mattoon is in the process right now. Modern Day, where we go every year, has had it for a while. Taylorville's got it. Mount Zion has it. And yeah, they're talking about putting field turf down. The price tag that's being thrown around, $1.4 million. Like you said, Mike, not 100% sure what the funding source looks like. All I can say is that based on what I'm hearing, it seems like the school board is behind it, so, I mean, that's conjecture at this point until they go on the record in a meeting and say it, we'll see, but it's still in the exploratory process. But the exploratory process is going to happen pretty quickly because they, like you said, would like to get it done for next season. And that means starting soon so that you're not in the same boat as Mattoon this year, where you got to go play all your home games in Charleston because you don't have a field. That'd be nice.
Where did they play? Did they play at EAU or where
Yes.
did they play?
Mm-hmm. They played at Eastern. Mm-hmm. So, and it's one of those things. It's easy for me to talk about this because I don't live in Effingham School District, and so I'm not a taxpayer there. Now, I don't, and I would need more information as far as where the money comes from. But I will say that people always concentrate on the price tag first and don't think about the potential benefits that range beyond the football team. It's not that, and that's something that Coach Hefner was, of course, quick to bring up, and something that I had mentioned on the air with Greg when we were discussing it, is that like that's not money that's going to be spent wherever it comes from that just benefits the football program.
Right.
He put it really well. He said that turns into the biggest and most versatile classroom that the school has, because you can, your PE classes can get out on it regardless of how wet it's been outside. Other sports can make use of it. And I've seen this at Eastern all the time. The soccer team uses that football field surface for their practices when they need to. You see the baseball and softball teams out there working out on it when they want to get outdoors, but yet maybe it's too muddy or sloppy to be on their fields. Right. And again, there's just the marching band invitational was the thing that Greg was quick to bring up, because that's something that means a lot to him that he MCs every year.
I happened to drive by this year during that. My daughter was helping at a food truck, and my wife and I mean, I've heard the music in a distance from home, and I assumed there would be a lot of people there, but I was shocked at the amount of people who were, just, obviously with band, you've got so many kids who are involved and parents, and it was, there's a lot of people coming to town for that. And I know one of the things I dipped my toe into social media, where I don't like to, reading about what do you think about this. And I don't think people realize Effingham's football team doesn't really practice on this field. It's not, well, the band doesn't get to use it. Well, no one really gets to use it other than the night of games, just because the old Klosterman field, we practiced on it every day. The band, and it was, Astro dirt, as we called it, because it was in the shape of a football. The closer you got to midfield, the wider it was, and then narrowed again down near the end zones. And it was, for the most part, dirt, because we did everything on there.
Yeah.
And a grass field can't take that. So this will be, I think, a really be nice to where you can have soccer, soccer can use it. The band can use it more. PE classes, your other spring sports can now get out there. And if the money's coming private donation, I think that's awesome. that's kind of what I've understood. Now I don't have all the facts with that, but that's kind of what I've heard. So yeah, I think it's a great thing for the school and a great thing for the facility.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you and I are both in favor of this, but people will say, well, of course these guys are because athletics is what they care about. But in these situations, and I've been involved with trying to get referendums passed in small school districts before, and I know that these conversations are never pleasant. But I would say that the one common theme that there always is that people jump to whatever conclusion is in their mind about it before they have really done their research about how a thing is going to work or what the mechanics of it are. And so I would just urge anybody who hears about this and says, well, I don't like that, I don't support that, just make sure you understand. Again, we don't even know at this point exactly what the funding mechanics are going to be for it. So hard to say how you feel about it until you know that important bit of information. But even if even if the district is footing part of the bill, you have to think about how it benefits the district as a whole. And also, a lot of time and energy goes into maintaining a football field and making sure it's ready for a game. And those are things that you don't have to spend as much time on if it's an artificial surface. So
Exactly right.
that can be delved out elsewhere to benefit the school in some other way. So a lot of there's a lot to it. Nothing is ever simple. And I would just say though that I would personally be pretty excited to see the Hearts playing on a new surface next year. And just from my own personal preference, I hope that it gets pushed through.
I don't think we're going to have the bright red turf. That'd be kind of unique. But,
yeah, that's good, dude. Like
you just don't want blue like Boise, because then you got to have a person whose job is to clean up the waterfowl that land hard on that blue surface. But no, I think it'll be a really good thing. And congrats to Dave Waltman, the athletic director, who's obviously been going through the whole process. And again, like I said, I hope it gets done. It'll be a nice addition.
So you think we got football covered then? I think we do.
Yeah, I think so. Switch gears a little bit. State tennis meet was this weekend. Saw a lot of pictures. People in blankets, girls playing in stocking caps. It's almost like, the golf season got shifted everything up a week to avoid some of that. State tennis tournaments in Chicago every year, obviously a little north of here, so the temperature is usually a little different. And it's played at, I want to say, 6 different high school facilities.
Yeah, they do.
It's spread out. It's very well run, but yeah, and the thing is, as a team, if you've got multiple girls participating, you've got kids in this suburb and kids, you're kind of scattered. So Teutopolis ended up, I think, as a team, finished 13th. But their doubles team of Macy Probst and Isabel Hemmon ended up finishing 5th. They got beat in the quarterfinals by the #1 seeded team from Chicago University High, who ended up getting 2nd, by the way. Up until they played T-Town, they'd only lost 2 games. So they had played 1, 2, 3. T-Town was their 4th match. And in their first 3 matches, they went 6-0, 6-0, 6-0, 6-1, 6-0, 6-1, I think. So they'd only lost 2 games. And they beat T-Town, I think, 6-0 or 6-1. The first one, 6-1, I believe. And then the second one went 7-5. So, T-Town had their chances there. Yeah. And pushed them to the limit. And when I saw that, I was like, wow, that's pretty impressive. This team that's just, steamrolled everybody they played. They battled them. So then when, T-Town, then when you lose, you go to the consolation side. They were really never challenged, even in the 5th place. They won 6-1, 6-4. And I think that was against the team who was the number 3 seed going in. So um, good for them. I mean, they medal. Back in the day, tennis was probably one of the last sports to go to 2 classes. So people think, oh, now they're 2 classes, this is going to be easy. No, because you've got a lot of pretty good sized schools.
Yeah.
You split it in half, and a lot of people have girls tennis. Yeah, and then Lexi Will and Olivia Hemmon also played doubles. They lost 2 matches. They lost their first one 7-5, 7-5. So that was a real nail biter, which, you get that, you pick up a couple more points. Now you go up. Now you're in the top 10 probably. And then Grace Haney played singles, and her matches were really close. I know her second match she lost. She got beat 6-4, 7-5. So girls went up there and competed well, and big shout out to them. And St. Anthony, Grace Karalevich was in singles and won some matches. I think one in the consolation side, maybe she won a couple matches. FEM had a couple girls up there. So, we've always been represented. Again, we talk about there's always somebody going deep, and we've always sent girls from this area to state tennis. And I just hate to see them all, bundled up and, wearing sweats and stocking caps when they're playing.
Well, that's how you knew that the weather was going to turn this weekend, because state tennis was going on.
Yeah,
you can't have unseasonably warm temperatures for state tennis. I don't believe it's allowed, but
I think that's one of the things the city of Chicago they will not allow to happen. So,
yeah, I mean, I think people who don't follow it real closely, they would hear these results and be like, okay. And really it's an accomplishment, because again, you go up there and you can set your goal to win the thing if you want to, but at the end of the day, to go up there and make some noise and knock some people off, it's doing something, because there are a lot of schools in the state where this is what they do,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to tread delicately here, but they have the kind of students that are able to concentrate on this stuff privately and put a lot of time and energy into becoming very good tennis players, and maybe more so than people around here are generally able to do. So you're kind of going into it at a bit of a handicap, and so
sure. That's fair.
I think I put that
similar to the golf situation.
Sure.
Not as much with golf as tennis, I think, because it's very similar. And when you look at how the teams fared, Chicago University, Chicago Latin, Elmhurst Timothy Christian, Oak Park Fenwick, Danville, New Lenox Providence, Arlington Heights, Chatham, Chicago Wolcott, Elgin Academy, Peoria Rich Woods, Chicago Peyton. Those were the teams that finished ahead of St. Anthony.
Mm-hmm.
Or ahead of Teutopolis. So, they're big schools.
Yeah.
And, shout out to them. Good deal. Coach Daters, I want to say Coach Vogt, but Coach Daters, now that she's married, does a good job. She has a lot of girls out for tennis. Her and I were talking. It's just kind of like with, all the kids I get out for golf is great, but it presents other problems, is a little hard word to use, but other situations, it's hard to, get as much done. I know she's got, I think the boys coach, Andy Mersman, helps her. So that's good. And Tita's got a nice tradition with girls tennis. It goes back to their Park District program. So good job for them. Cross country, it's got to be wet a little this week, because I think cross country sectionals are Saturday, and usually it seems like you you don't have hard, fast tracks to run on, it seems like, when that happens. So,
Yeah,
and
but cooler temperatures are nice though for that.
cooler's okay.
Yeah.
You run more than I do, so you would know.
Yeah, I mean, those early season meets, I mean, even when they're running them at like 9 o'clock on a Saturday morning, the humidity can get to you a little bit. And then you get to October, early November, and you start maybe getting temperatures in the 40s or 50s. I don't know. I can't speak for everybody, but to me, that's ideal, right? Like,
well, I went to one of my daughter's meets down in Edwardsville and Jess ran at that big preseason, their first kickoff big invitational. Craig Virgin's there. He's on the microphone the whole time talking while they're running. And it's damn hot, Whitey. I mean, it's
yeah, I can't.
85, 90 degrees, and these kids are out there running. And part of that trail you get there at Edwardsville, you get in and around some trees, and you're not really going through paths in the woods. I mean, like, some courses, Newton, Robinson's got a little bit of that, Shelby's got a little bit of that, but it's, there's some areas where there's not a lot of airflow. And then when you're as hot as it is,
And
you see kids in pain during this race.
Well, and the thing to me, from my personal running experience, is that when it's really hot out, I mean, and I've been doing it for years, and yet the first mile or so, you think, I feel pretty good, I can push it just like normal, and maybe this heat's not getting to me that much, and it never fails. By the time you get into that third mile, if you haven't kind of paced yourself, planned ahead, then you're going to be on your back when the race is over with. And you get deeper into the fall, and you can start pushing yourself a little bit more, starting a little faster, trying to stay with the front group. And so you'll see, and that's a big part of track and running too, is that, like, people will put up their best times when they run against the best competition, because they're pushing themselves a little bit more, and you're able to get away with that more when the temperatures are more forgiving. So
now, when you say ending up on your back, would that be a hyperbole?
Well,
I was challenged to use that word in our show today, so I could let Chris Custer know I did get the word hyperbole.
It's not hyperbole in a sense, because I can remember, and nothing, this is not meant as I'm not making fun of anybody, but I remember in my newspaper days when I would cover some of the cross-country invitationals on a Saturday morning, it would be the T-Town girls teams would always run until they crossed the finish line, and then a lot of them would drop as soon as they crossed the finish line. Like, you talk about leaving it all on the field. Well, in that case, they really did. You'd see these girls, they'd get 2 steps beyond the finish line, and someone would have to drag them out of the way. And
the St. Anthony Invitationals, when Jess would run, and she hasn't ran for 2 years, but Jess ran 4 years of high school cross country, and you have those volunteers. So when you have a big invitational, or you have a regional, or you have a sectional, you need volunteers, and we affectionately call it the puke chute. Okay. You are in when they're coming out, and it was a regional, I believe, and was wet out at Mid-America. Of course, you've got boots on, because there's a little watery area where that finish line is. And, our job is to get kids out of there, because if the first runner of the day crosses the line and 4-step stops, bends over, and can't breathe, pretty soon you've got a
log jam,
40-car pileup at the finish line. So there's a handful of us, parents, whose job was to, you get the kid out of the way, and that area widens significantly for a reason. So you have, let's get you over here. And it's a lot of fun, and you don't ever want to wear nice clothes when you have that job, because some little girl or guy may have had too much green Gatorade right before the race.
Yeah.
Just saying.
I mean, yeah, and again, like this is just anecdotal. Just happened to be the time when I was at the newspaper. It seemed like it was the T-Town girls teams. They were the ones who had an inordinate number of competitors who were that competitive, right? Like
Mhm.
they didn't slow down until they were across the finish line, and then it was over. But
Yep.
hey, you know what? They usually did pretty well too. So
Oh,
uh,
yeah.
and cross country is like the opposite of track, because in the spring you'll have your track season. At the beginning of the year it's like miserable outside, and then by the time you get up to Eastern, like what, the last week of May for some of the state championships, I
90
mean,
degrees.
yeah, that artificial turf, and they had to push it back even a little bit this last year. They did everything a little bit later, but yeah, you get that infields, that artificial turf that's just soaking up the sun. And yeah, I don't know how many times I'd be interviewing a kid at the state track meet, and he or she would have to stop talking to me and turn their head and go barf somewhere, because they just got done running probably as hard as they'd ever run, uh, probably in as hot of temperatures as they'd ever done. So that's always a good time.
Bart Willenberg was always quicker than me working in the puke chute. So somehow he avoided a lot of these issues that, I wasn't nimble enough to get out of the way of. So, but it was fun. And, like I said, these kids, like you said, they're putting it out there. Sectionals, if it was warm at a sectional, because this is your chance for state, and these kids are selling everything they have.
Mm-hmm.
And there's the dead sprint between two guys to get to the line, and you're like, all right, I'm going to catch the one on the left. You've got the one on the right, and they come through, and you just kind of let them get through, and you hope they're still standing, and you get that hand, and okay, can you grab a handful of shirt in the back, and you walk them until then you have your secondary group who you hand them off to, and that's where you have a lot of people there. And if you have a lot of people manning the race, it goes smooth. If you don't, it becomes a cluster. And
Yep.
you can't afford that in the postseason, because if a kid's got to slow down to cross the finish line because of a log jam and another kid just dives through and nips him and takes that last individual spot, you feel for the kids. So, but kudos to those cross country runners. It's coming, and getting to go to Detweiler and Peoria. That's, it's quite a treat. I went up there to watch when I was AD at T-Town. T-Town girls were there. I went up and watched my daughter running an invitational there. But it's quite the scene to see there, and it's really, you can see a lot of the race, and it's amazing. And those kids, I have so much respect for that, what they go through.
So I don't know. We got anything else as far as local prep sports?
I think we're good there. Volleyball postseason starts this week. So we'll be seeing some things there. National scene seems pretty quiet. I watched 10 minutes of the Bears just so I would have entertainment yesterday, and it was it was entertaining. I love it because all the people beginning of the year in that preseason, after the Justin Fields played really well in the preseason game, oh, he's got to start. And then you had people say, no, we can't. We have to protect him because of our line. He's on the verge of where he's going to start seeing ghosts, because he is constantly under pressure. I remember Mark Bulger for the Rams when I followed the Rams hard, ran into that. He had a lot of skills, but then all of a sudden a couple of guys on the line got hurt, and he was more worried about where am I going to get hit than being able to focus down the field. And
yeah, I think that the Bears, I mean, I am going to stay optimistic on Fields because it's too early.
He's got a bright future if he can survive mentally getting there. That's the whole idea.
This is not a team that I think any quarterback could play particularly well on. he's not getting a lot of help. Not only do they have the substandard offensive line that you kind of, as a Bears fan, just get used to seeing on a year-to-year basis. It just seems to be what they do. But not a lot of help either, skill position wise. Like he doesn't have some vaunted group of receivers that he can kind of like put it up and let them go bail him out. He doesn't have that.
So where do they spend? Is there all their money spent on defensive players?
I get, and they really like to accumulate tight ends. They seem like every time a tight end comes available, they have to add that person to the roster. I want the team to succeed, not only because I'm a fan, but because right now your general manager, Ryan Pace, is another EIU guy. And that's a feather in our cap. We'd like for that to go well, but it's not going well. I don't feel like the way they're playing and the plays they're calling are really suited for Justin Fields' skill set either. I don't think anyone really envisions him being necessarily a 5-7 step drop guy all the time. And especially when you're young and you haven't played in the league, well, playing that way means that you need to read defenses pre and post snap, and then be able to make quick decisions. And nobody's going to be able to do that. So
that comes with time. It's such a different game at the pro level. It's so much quicker, and there's so much deception.
Which is why you have to, maybe as a coach, revert to less of a pro style offense, no matter how proud you are of what a smart offensive genius you think you are. Like, you got to, at a certain point, tailor what you're doing to the personnel that you have available to you and try to survive. And it seems like right now they're content to just do what they want to do. And if they lose,
they're jamming a square peg in a round hole right now.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't hate Matt Nagy, but I do feel like he's been pretty stubborn at times. Like he thinks he's pretty sure he knows what he's doing, and he's gonna do that. Be damned, success be damned, and it hasn't worked out real well lately. And I'm not sure how much time he has.
And his success as a coordinator had a pretty good offensive line in front of a pretty good quarterback.
Yeah, and listen,
so that's the thing. You always hear people say, "Oh, they're a system quarterback." Well, yes, but they're also a lot of times, systems fit certain personnel. You always hear that argument, and it goes both ways. So
he also had Andy Reid there too. And
I know.
And I mean, if Andy Reid's coached offense in this league for a little while, I mean, he can make an offensive coordinator, I'm sure, look a little better than he actually
was involved with the berth of the West Coast. So
yeah. So I don't know.
So before we talked about baseball, staying with football, I was watching Illinois Penn State, and I was watching a little of it, doing errands, doing some odd things, and I kept checking the score, and I said, this Illinois is still hanging around. So watch a lot of that game. When it got into the overtime, I wasn't aware of how the rule was changed. I thought the rule was after the second overtime, you had to, on any score, you had to go for two. I didn't know it just strictly came down to a 2-point conversion fiesta. And I will say this, though, once you reach that point, you were vested. You were hanging there watching. When you go to the 25 and you do that, yeah, but it's not, oh my God. But when it's quote sudden death, like it is with the 2-point, and both teams were just like, Penn State ran the little gadget play and threw the ball to the quarterback. And somebody said, well, why didn't he dive for it? And I said, so then he catches it at the 2 and he's down. That did absolutely nothing. he was trying to gather it in and take 2 steps and fall back into the end zone, and couldn't handle it. And then Illinois, when their other quarterback, which my understanding from what they were saying on ESPN, broke, got his arm broke, had the guy there, it just seemed like it was such a painfully slow delivery to get the ball there. Both teams had chances early and they just couldn't get it done. And, but very exciting finish. Big stop. Illinois' defense, Penn State ran that little shovel pass, and the kid from Belleville West, the Randolph kid, isn't that where Liddell played basketball in Belleville West? They were the state champs, or East?
I'm not going to be able to confirm for you.
Okay, well, where he was on that basketball team, and he's turned into a really, really good defensive lineman. He made a big play, so it was impressive, and glad to see Illinois get the win. Unfortunately, watched Indiana that night. My daughter was sitting in the front row in the rain at Memorial Stadium, and I said, hey, they pulled this off. You're going to be a field stormer tonight. Well, that got erased pretty quick because their second string quarterback got injured on a touchdown pass to tie it at 7, and they look good. Now they don't have, now they're using their third and then fourth string quarterback because their preseason starter was out, and then this kid got hurt, and Ohio State's just a machine. They were very, very impressive. So
yeah,
I watched more college football this weekend than I have. And,
well, I'll tell you, I was at a birthday party. My 4-year-old son was invited to. So the closest thing to athletic competition that I was watching while Illinois was playing was some kids hitting a piñata. So I missed out on the excitement. I know Illinois football had kind of an interesting week. I know that the coach made some headlines for some comments that he had made about his offensive line and them not being the kids he recruited, which I kind of see where he's coming from. I do think you got to be maybe a little more tactful about how you say a thing, because
I guess he came out later and with the team and had the full transcript and said, here's everything that was said, not just the little sound bite.
Yeah.
And it was obvious that they were okay because, they ran up 300 some yards on the ground against Penn, and they dominated Penn State.
Yeah, no,
I mean, they bullied them.
My thinking with that is just that it's not his first rodeo, right? Like, he's been coaching college football for a long time. So, you know how things work, how quotes get disseminated through the press. Sometimes, the most interesting bit is the only thing that people hear by the time it makes it through a couple of rounds of that telephone game. And, I don't know. We get it, right? Like, this is your first year. The previous coach didn't do a very good job of recruiting at all. That's, I think, pretty well documented. At a certain point, it just doesn't, I don't know how much you need to keep bringing it up. But anyway, good win for them. Penn State was ranked pretty highly. It sounded like they were the benefit of some calls early on in the game from what I was hearing. And so Illinois survived, and
Illinois had, in the fourth quarter, had 2 touchdowns erased.
Yeah.
On penalties on the same drive.
Yeah.
But they were both penalties. I mean, it was, it's just one of those things. On the baseball world, Whitey, your Braves are are at the World Series now.
It's exciting. I was in Game 6. They were leading 4-1, and then it was in the 7th inning when the Dodgers got three straight guys on. One of them had scored, so they've got second and third. They're only down
Nobody
2.
out. Yeah.
Nobody out. Now I'm thinking, here we go, right? Like, that's what playing the Dodgers is all about, right? Like, your no lead is safe. You never feel good. Like, when Rosario hits that 3-run homer to go ahead 4-1, it's exciting, right? But all I'm thinking is, well, that's, you need more. And as it turns out, they didn't, but you can't help but think that way. But yeah, hey, going to the World Series, It's exciting. They're not going to be, they're not, I don't know if any odds have come out yet, but I'm sure they're not favored to beat Houston. Houston's got a great offense.
Does it start in Houston?
Yes, Houston's got home field because Braves. I mean, it's based on wins and losses, and the Braves
Right,
only won
right.
88 games. So yeah, they start in Houston tomorrow night. We're recording this on a Monday. We should really start saying the date at the beginning of the show. I keep thinking I should say that today is Monday, October 25th, and this is episode number 7, but I never do. But anyway, yeah, they start tomorrow in Houston. Houston's without McCullers, so their starting rotation is not the strongest. And if you, I mean that series against Boston, the ALCS, clearly they can give up some runs, but it's going to come down to run prevention for Atlanta. Should be a good series. I think it's, I think most of the country is still very much not wanting anything good to happen to Houston. So I guess I'll take the support from the
masses.
Yeah. I think that in certain circles, the Braves are not super popular either because their fans like to do some things in the stadium that it's been made pretty clear that maybe they shouldn't do anymore. But, I don't know if it's old habits die hard or more of a you can't tell me what to do thing. But, they're my team, and I'm excited. The guys on the field are a lot of fun. Like you put all that other crap aside, and the Braves have a lot of good, fun personalities on the team, I think, and not a lot to root against there as far as the guys playing the game. And Brian Snitker, their manager, is an Illinois guy, right? So why not root for the Braves?
I'm a big Freddie Freeman fan. I like him. I like the way he's kind of old school, just a big kid that swings the bat, hits the ball hard.
No, there's they're a lot of fun, and they're NLCS MVP. Eddie Rosario is a guy that Cleveland gave away at the trade deadline. That trade was Pablo Sandoval going back to Cleveland to be DFA'd immediately, and Eddie Rosario and $500,000 coming back to Atlanta. So the Indians paid they paid the Braves a little bit to take him off their hands so that they could dump the salary.
The Braves have to pay the rest of Sandoval's salary.
Yeah, I don't know exactly how it all worked, but it was the bottom line is the Cleveland got nothing but a little bit of money off the books.
So why did they want Rosario off the books?
It's Cleveland.
Was a problem.
It's Cleveland. They had decided they weren't going to contend. So they're just going to save any nickel and dime that they could possibly save. That's the way Cleveland operates. It works as long as you keep that pipeline of pitchers coming through, and that kind of failed them this year for some reasons that are not their fault and some reasons that are their fault. But a lot of people watch like the Tampa Bays of the world continue to just be borderline unstoppable during the regular season on a shoestring budget. And so other teams say, well, why can't we do that? And that's because it's not easy, right?
Flavor of the day. And they do a great job with young pitching.
Yeah.
On a note of scratching my head, and I'm like, oh no. Jordan Hicks was pulled from the Arizona Fall League. He's no longer throwing in the Arizona Fall League. So I don't know if that means he's having some issues again with his arms. So
yeah, I mean, that's been unfortunately a problem for the Cardinals is that they, he's had his injury issues, which I don't know. You start to look around and it's pretty cool to see guys throwing 102 miles an hour.
Yeah, throwing that 100-mile-an-hour sinker, but their shelf life isn't very long.
No. And you're even seeing it with Jacob deGrom for the Mets. Before the season, everyone's like, well, look at this guy. He just keeps adding velocity. How long is he going to be able to do it? Well, I'm not a doctor, so I don't know exactly what went into his situation, but he broke, and I don't think they were 100% sure how to deal with it or what was wrong, because they kept saying, we're going to bring him back. And then it never happened. So
now, is Syndergaard a free agent?
Yeah, Syndergaard's a free agent. So
He's a free agent. He's got the same issues.
yep, they could. That'll be an interesting case because they really don't know what they have with him, right? Like he probably um, he pitched
Someone
like
will take a flyer on him and get him
yeah
cheap,
he
and
pitched
he'll perform, or someone will overpay and he won't perform.
he pitched a couple of innings late in the season, which seemed kind of pointless, but I'm sure he wanted to do it just to get out there and do it. But even then, he couldn't throw a breaking ball. It was just fastball changeup. But yeah, the Mets could make him a qualifying offer, or he could take his chances elsewhere. We'll see. But even the Dodgers, they've got a lot of big names that are going to be free agents. So they may look a lot different next year. But one thing about the Dodgers, everyone wants to talk about the Dodgers payroll, and they spend so much money. And of course they're good because they spend so much money, but they also develop talent as well as any.
Oh, yes.
Like this is not like the mid 90s Yankees just going out there and, putting the best team the money can buy out there. They are able to make a lot of pretty shrewd trades because like the 13th best guy in their system is still a quality prospect. Right. And so, maybe I just feel that way because finally the Braves were able to knock them off, and I want it to mean something a little more. But that's an extremely well-run franchise that goes past just being able to toss $250 million at.
Right. They've been able to make some trades and bring in some high-dollar people adding to that payroll because of the amount of people they have.
But they could look a little different, and that'll be interesting to watch. I hope there's something of an off season, right? Instead of there could be a work stoppage as soon as the World Series ends, the collective bargaining.
Yeah, I hope that's not it. So, and I guess the press conference is happening now where the Cardinals are introducing Oliver Marmol as their new manager.
Yeah, so he was their bench coach under Schilt, Mike Schilt, who just got let go recently.
He just interviewed for the Padre job yesterday.
Yeah. It's kind of interesting to me is that they're hiring from within again and seem to have their candidate in place. I mean, they seem to know what they were going to do when they let Schilt go.
Here's my outside the box thinking on this. Mike Schilt was brought in as a bridge until Marmol got old enough. They felt like they could, because he's under 40. What is he, 38, 39?
35. He's
35. We don't want to hire a 33-year-old. So let's use Schilt, make him the bench coach. And then let's see when we're ready to make that maneuver. Because I'm assuming Marmol embraces analytics a little more. I don't know. I mean, that's my conspiracy thought for the day. He seems to be very well liked amongst the players. It sounds like a lot of the coaches will be returning from what I've seen from Derek Gould and some on the Twitterverse. Some other former Cardinals now being probably tabbed as some instructors. And so I think it's interesting. They've got an interesting team. Again, it all depends on how certain people come back. If Dakota Hudson comes back, like they think he's going to, they're going to have money to spend. So I think they're going to go out and buy a pitcher. Nolan Gorman, if they think he can play second base, he's going to be a good bat there. He will make people forget Jeff Kent hitting home runs if he can play second base. It'll be interesting.
Well, to me, making an interesting hire is better than going the retread route. Like every time a manager job comes open, the first thing you hear is like a half a dozen names of guys who have been with 2 or 3 different teams, and they're basically the biggest point in their favor is that they've done it before, right? Like forgetting the fact that maybe they didn't do it so well before, but even
they had their Buck Showalter. Okay, I've seen him enough on MLB and things like this. I'm not sold that he would be a great hire.
I will say Buck Showalter, when I've seen him broadcasting, you talk about embracing the modern front office, and pretty much every front office at this point is, doing its fair share of number crunching. And that has, I think, been a bridge that had to be gapped between your old school guys and, your new school front office construction. Buck Showalter seems to at least understand where those people are coming from and what they're trying to do. Now, he may or may not like all of it. I don't like all of it, but I think being willing to understand is a big thing. And maybe, maybe that's a part of the reason that Mike Schilt flamed out with this group. Also, if we explore other theories besides the one that you put forward, maybe he just didn't see. I mean, they said philosophical differences, right? When they talked about why they moved on from him, maybe it was that he was being asked to deploy his team in a way that he just didn't agree with. But yeah, I don't know. Buck Showalter's had his day in the sun too, right? Like he's managed. He's, to me, going with a young guy and seeing what he's got is at least interesting. It doesn't always work. You can ask Robin Ventura how it worked out, but sometimes it goes pretty well, it's just kind of a crapshoot, and we'll see with the Cardinals. They've got a talented enough team that I think they can get it done with whoever.
Depending on how good you are as a manager, depends so much on how healthy your team stays, how, there's so many factors. Managers can do so much. Some guys, obviously, they're horrible at in-game execution and when to double switch, when to not double switch. Why are you pulling your cleanup hitter? There's all kinds of things.
Yeah.
But I think they get too much credit when they win, and I think they get too much blame when they lose.
I go along with that, and I think the managers have there's two jobs there. The tactician side of it, honestly, over the course of a 162 game season, I'm not convinced of how important the in-game decisions are. It might cost you a game or two here, but unless you're just really screwing up in a historical fashion, like it's the talented rosters at the end of the day are going to win the ball games. I think a manager's job over the course of 162 games is to get the guys all going in the same direction, playing together and doing their jobs. And then you get to the postseason and all of a sudden the job changes and the tactician part of it becomes very important. And like Dave Roberts for the Dodgers, in the past, he's pulled the right strings, right? But then, sometimes this year you got to thinking that maybe he was trying to be too clever by half with some of the decisions that he made, because he understands that he needs to maybe manage a little differently in the postseason. But also, if you've got a great bullpen, just use your great bullpen, right? Like maybe you don't have to bring starters in to get outs in the middle of the game because your bullpen's good enough to get the job done. So
that one came back to bite him.
Yep. But yeah, and so maybe that had something to do with Schilt too. We'll never know, but maybe the players didn't, maybe it was internal stuff that ended up, costing him his job. It's hard to say.
Here's the big question. Marmol's 35. He's got two players that are 40 or knocking at the door between Wainwright and Molina. If the universal DH becomes a thing, do the Cardinals sign Albert Pujols to a one? I'm just saying, it's, I think that Jake and Elwood get the band back together. One more hurrah.
I think that, okay, with the difference in age aspect, with having players that are older than the manager, I mean, that happens occasionally. And really, it can work one of two ways. Like the players could obviously be like, well, look at this kid, I know better than he does. But also they could become sort of like his biggest allies in the clubhouse, right? Like, they have that respect. And so they help get the team moving in the right direction. To me, Wainwright and Molina don't seem like guys who are going to undermine their manager. You know what I'm saying? They don't have
I agree
that
with you.
reputation. Pujols is interesting. You would have to have universal DH for that move to make any sense.
That's the only reason you consider.
He hits lefties pretty well.
He's hit I watched him on, the few times I saw him bat during the postseason. He's a threat.
Yeah, his numbers over the course of the season and in a not insignificant number of at bats against lefties, he was a productive player. Against right-handers, he's, I don't want to say useless, but
Right.
he's not a good option and he can't play the field. So he's got an extremely tight focus of usefulness, but on the right roster, there's still a place for him. He could probably stand to do a little cardio in the off season. I'm not gonna say that that's not true, but also I know that as I get older, it's harder and harder to no matter how hard you work physically, sometimes your body just doesn't cooperate anymore. So,
But yeah, as a DH, and especially if you get, they got to go out and get another left-handed bat, be it off the bench, be it okay. So you do you go back and forth. You have a lefty when righties pitch, then you've got him as a bat off the bench. You're going to have to give some players a day rest to give them
Yeah.
So I think it's an interesting story. It'll be interesting to see what happens.
And if you could find semi-regular at bats for the guy, he is knocking on the door of 700. He's like, what, 20, I think 21 shy of 700, and just a couple less than that shy of passing Alex Rodriguez on number 4 on the all-time list.
If you had a movie script, he would hit that in Bush against Kyle Farnsworth after he went up and in, and do it in St. Louis, and then you bring Mike Shannon back for a day on the mic for that to happen.
Well, I think the most far-fetched part of that at this point is digging up Kyle Farnsworth. I don't know in the last.
Well, that or having Shannon put together a sentence. That's a toss-up between.
Well, Shannon's still working this year, isn't he? A little bit. This was the swan song.
He was limited, and he's done. And near the end, he was struggling.
Yeah,
I hear more on the radio, and one of those things. So, well, Mr. Whitey, I've got to run.
Yeah,
I'm getting messaged for some of my other things I had to do today. Next week, and I will try to get that time confirmed. But D1 college coach next week. So that should be good, and see what we can do.
Sounds good. I'll let you run.
All righty, brother. Thank you.
Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.